like start off by just telling me a little bit about your early life. What brought you into football?
Yeah, I grew up in Maryland. Um, and I have three older siblings, one of them being an older brother who, my dad put him in football like immediately. My dad also played in college and in at Howard in the US and would always be playing on like the weekend leagues and playing pickup with all the Caribbean guys in the area and everything. So that was very much like football was a big part of the household. And I kind of just forced myself into the into the trifectum, I guess, in the house. At
Yeah.
first it was just my dad and my brother, and then I was always super active and I would be out in the yard while they're, training or working on things. And yeah, and then eventually I was like, I wanna join a team. And they put me on one of those rec teams. I think it was co-ed, like a co-ed rec team where they wear like the shin pads outside of the socks, like one of those,
Oh wow.
like
Yeah.
like the level
Yeah.
when people have the full kit but still wear their shin pads outside their socks. But yeah, and my mom is actually the first person to kind of engage that interest with me, which I don't really hold over my dad too much because especially at that time, I mean, now football is more common, but at that time he was like, "Oh, put her in track and field, and it's fine." He wasn't really used to the concept of girls playing and actually taking it seriously. But then he came to my game. I
Yeah.
think I graduated from like the rec team, and I went to a more, you know, I think it was still a rec team, but they're just a little bit better. Maybe it was an all girls team. And he was like, okay, she's not bad. Like, let's actually, she's into it. So let's take it more seriously. And yeah, I just started to train more often and kind of move up the ladder in terms of level and clubs. Kind of blindly because, my both my parents aren't from the States and had no knowledge of women's sports, honestly, outside of track and field. My mom being raised in Cameroon and uh, my dad in Jamaica. So we kind of just worked our way through the journey. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
And you said that your family had, I guess, more interest in you doing track and field. Did you
Yeah,
do football and track and field at the same time? And for how many years?
I did actually. So one of my older sisters ran track. She was a mid-distance runner, and I don't know, she did all sorts of things. But I started this was in middle school where she started first and kind of paved the way a little bit, and then they kind of threw me in there too. And I wanted to be a sprinter. I thought I was, and then I got dusted in my first 100-meter dash. I think I got second to last. I was like, oh, this is speed. Okay, got it. And then my coach was like, like, let's try you in the 8. And then, let's try you in the mile. So it just like kept going up and up until I was officially a long distance runner throughout middle school. And so I did that and football at the same time, which I like to this day, I'm so grateful for my parents for allowing me to kind of balance and juggle both sports as long as I did because I had to take some. It got to the point where like the track and cross country was competing with my time in football, and I actually took some time off of football to like pursue track more seriously. And for that reason and that training, like I've never had to really worry about a fitness test. I think yeah, no, I've never had to worry about it. So I'm really grateful for having that like core because it just taught me a lot about like my body and all that. But in high school, because yes, of course you have to choose eventually. There was a point where I was actually going to run instead of play football in college, which I'm so glad that I did not do. Who was that girl? I have no idea. But around junior, like going into senior year, I actually switched back to wanting to play football in college. And just got very blessed with an opportunity and a
Yeah.
scholarship to go play and keep pursuing that. So,
So how did you decide on which school you wanted to go to going into college?
it really chose me, I will say. I was so naive and ignorant of the whole process. I mean, my dad's, your stereotypical Jamaican man of that generation and kind of stubborn, but just doesn't really know any better, but let's just wing it. Um, and we didn't really have a community around us that knew better, specifically in like my lane. There's okay, maybe if my brother wanted to play, kind of know what that path is just as a man, I guess. But for women's sports, it was just very uncharted territory for me and my parents. And so yeah, I just kind of I at first I was emailing colleges, which and then that just got very stressful and discouraging, honestly, because you'd send your emails and then you just wouldn't get a response, or they say, oh, you don't, we don't have any availability or money or just things like that. So eventually we decided to kind of focus on my performances and the showcases, because that's like a big feeding pool for universities and colleges to come and pick up players. Normally they're going to watch a lot of the players that they already are recruiting,
Yeah.
but we hear so many stories about people going and they're like, "Oh, who's this kid? Does anyone have them?" And so yeah, it was one of those showcases, and the coach of the school that I eventually got an offer from was just walking by my field and was like, "Oh, this girl's a senior. Normally they're, committed by now, but why not? Let's just ask." At the time, we had brochures, which ages me, but you had your little team brochure and with your picture and, a couple of details about you. And yeah, he called me. I was like, literally had no idea about it was Purdue University. I had no idea about the school or the league or the conference. So I was like doing some research online while I was on the phone with him. And I'm like, whoa, Big Ten, like, whoa, academic school. Ooh, like these are really
Mhm.
good things. So yeah. And they just so happened to kind of have like a pocket of scholarship money to bring in a player. So it was just kind of serendipitous.
Yeah. And then you know that for some athletes, well, every athlete, I think, there's like a renewal on your scholarship each year. Did
Yeah,
you ever feel
yeah.
that there was a time where you felt uncomfortable in terms of balancing your academics and the performance on the field?
No, definitely. I think, well, yes. I'll also say that like I kind of came from a family where academic performance was very important. We weren't on military time or anything, but I knew I wasn't just going to Purdue for football. And so that was kind of like something that I carried with me. Purdue is a very difficult academic school, so I definitely got humbled in some subject areas for sure. But especially with the scholarship thing, I had like a very interesting case because the reason why they had space for me was because they had let go of a couple players before me. So I kind of knew that my performance, so I came in and I didn't have a full ride for all 4 years. I had kind of like different percentage packages for each year. And it actually went down as the years went up. But the deal was, air quotes, was that, based on my contribution on the field, that profile could change. Because like this is what we have right now, but that could change in the future. So I definitely had like a bit of anxiety of like, okay, I need to make sure I'm performing on the field so that I'm a valuable player, and that they want to keep me and that they can make those provisions to keep me as a player in the future.
Yeah.
But that didn't really cloud me that much because I was also just nervous about going to a college and playing at that level because I never really watched any women's games. And so I had this idea that, they were so far ahead of me and like I wasn't going to play any games my freshman year. There was going to be a huge learning curve and, I had all these these anxieties about that part. And yeah, but that actually was that, I guess like the scholarship and the situation was what eventually ended up, having me transfer to another school because, you know, that's another story. But I didn't do anything wrong, but it was the academic, or sorry, the financial package, and I didn't really want to put on a lot of weight, for me and my family to
Yeah.
to finish out the years at Purdue. So I very gracefully just landed in a in another top program and finished out my academic years there. So
Yeah, and I think that's a big learning lessons for all athletes, I think, because there's sometimes there's unfortunate things that happen like that, and it might not
yeah.
be in your power to change it, but at least you'll be
Mm,
ready for it in case something happens, and you're optimistic to know that you can get into another college if anything. Um,
yeah.
I also want to talk about when you're in Purdue. Did you find any mentors that kept you optimistic, like when you felt down about things like this, or was it just your family?
I didn't have yeah, I didn't have any, and I definitely wish I did because I spent 3 seasons, 3 academic years there, and I eventually transferred when I was going into my senior year. So, and my freshman year was like all star. I think because I played a lot of minutes. I started, I had some goals. I had a lot of assists. I had like an extremely successful freshman year, and I think it was because I went in without any expectations
Yeah,
and was like, okay, I'm just here to learn. I don't expect to play. So I was very creative, very free, very, just like a very positive player just for myself. And I think that translated on the field. But my sophomore year, I definitely had what people call like a sophomore slump. So you kind of come in like your freshman year and you surprise everyone and you're just on fire. And then maybe you get a little, I don't want to say conceited, but there's like a little bit of like arrogance and a little bit of maybe you take for granted the work and the mentality that you had in your previous year that made you so hungry and impacted your performance in a positive way. So my freshman year, I decided not to. Sometimes schools like to bring you in early to get you acclimated and like fitness wise, you can kind of join in their summer program. So freshman year, I decided not to. I was like, no, I trust my own training and like I need my pickup with the Jamaicans down the street. I need those things that help me kind of remain in my identity, and I kind of chose that environment. My sophomore year, I was like, oh, I don't need that. I can stay at school, and my priorities got influenced. I probably my diet also, and I was not the same hungry player. I didn't
yeah,
play nearly as much as in my other year. There's games where I didn't start. I just had a very like mentally difficult year. My academic load increased, and I didn't really have anyone like on the team. There was no one who was everyone was white. There was no, not to say like that was the reason, but sometimes like when you don't have someone that can like relate to where you come from or someone like older than you that can understand things, you just feel very alone in that experience and it makes you just be a little bit more, it makes you internalize a lot of things. So uh that was my first experience in that headspace. And for that, I'm just grateful. I lean a lot on my family, like my dad and my sisters, people, my family who came to visit, and just people who can kind of remind you, like, yo, like, you're that player, like, don't let a coach, make you feel like you can't do the things that made you successful last year, or like, like, don't forget who you are in this new space. And then I picked back up definitely like my junior year and that performance honestly allowed me a good opportunity to transfer into a good school. So yeah,
yeah. I
I kind of
understand.
went off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, you're good. So, fast forward to your end of Louisville. You played 1 or 2 years at Louisville, correct? How long did you spend at Louisville after you transferred from Purdue?
Yeah, I had one, yeah, I had 2 years. So I one season, like I finished my senior season at Louisville, and then I had an extra year, just like to finish out my credits. So I did like a fall season and a spring season.
Yeah. And then after that, you decided to go professionally,
Oh,
or was
I
there?
think we're frozen. Yeah. There wasn't like a very like it wasn't as glamorous as it is now, where it's like, I'm gonna go pro. I didn't really I just kind of like flowed into it. I
Yeah,
just kind of kept swimming. I think my let me see, my sophomore year is when I started with the Jamaican program with the U20s. So I think um being with and when did I start with the senior team? I think I started the senior team around like my senior year in college also. Um, so that kind of helped my transition of like, okay, like we're playing, like we're in the pool and we want to keep playing. And I after I graduated, I got an opportunity to play in Champions League, and I was like, okay, like let's go do this. And so it wasn't a very like we're doing this pro path. I just kind of like started to walk it
yeah,
and kept walking, if that makes sense. And never really paused to kind of think about what I what I was doing very much. But I'm like, okay, like we are playing with some of the best ballers in the world, and we want to keep doing it. And I guess that makes me a professional player now.
yeah, it
So
definitely does.
yeah.
And I think um, we both have, I guess, the opposite in terms of the plan for that. Because for me, at 16, I decided to say I wanted to go journey to Europe, and that motivated me to get to
Mm,
and in a professional environment at 24, I think
hmm
it was when I started, when I went to Iceland. So it shows the two sides of a coin where you walked your way in. I think
Yeah.
you love the game, but I don't think you had
Yeah.
the plan for it for it to be your career.
Yeah.
But you definitely took it
Right.
one step at a time. And I had a plan for
Yeah.
it from the start and I worked towards it. So I think it shows a good example on
hmm
both sides where it can lead in favor for you. So that
Yeah,
definitely
definitely.
motivates. And it also shows sometimes you walk by faith because some,
Yep.
sometimes the plan is not always going as you want it to, but things will work
Yeah.
out. And you did, what was the degree that you did in college?
Public health.
Public health. Do you feel that it helped you in any way when it comes to the relationships in football or anything in terms of networking?
I'm gonna be honest, not really.
Yeah,
Um, Not really. I mean, I think in just in life, it's important to kind of have some sort of academic study. Um, so I think honestly, it benefited me most when I was in college,
yeah,
and just having that like academic structure and kind of like also seeing the world and it means so actually, I don't know. That's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. I possibly in some ways, like in a lot of my travels
yeah,
and you know, kind of like seeing the cultures and like the way maybe like certain issues or kind of having like a little bit of my own background knowledge of how certain things are, I don't know, like the health economics of things. So maybe in like very small ways, like
yeah.
very, yeah. But other than that, not really. I did minor or I did like a certification minor in peace, justice, and social, excuse me, social transformation very randomly. I kind of added that to my course load at Louisville just so I could have some like variety, some extra color in like my studies and not
Yeah.
just be one-minded in something. So I honestly, that's definitely been helpful. I learned a lot of like problem solving and like, de-escalating conflict tips and things like that, which I think maybe I haven't been conscious of it, but it has definitely like influenced the way that I kind of show up on a team. And, especially in like women's sports, like where it doesn't make it any worse than men's sports, but like like chemistry is very important and how you balance, different characters on the team and kind of bring people together or, problem solve things is really important. So that definitely helps.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So it does benefit in some way, but it might not be as straightforward as people would think. Yeah,
Yeah.
so do you think that you would recommend a student athlete from high school to go into college or professional, or do you think it would depend on the person
To go to college before
before going
going pro.
professional? Yeah.
I think it would depend on the person. I know like my dad would always preach, still does, that the best thing that football can do is get you a free education. That's very valid, because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And having both, can open a lot of doors. I think it depends on if you're a guy or a girl. I think for girls, it's very beneficial to go to college just because of how much how like the quality of playing the quality of football in college for women is very high, and it looks very good on your resume if you've gone to a prominent university or program and you're a product of that institution. It can look very good. um and then for guys, I don't know that as much, but I know like the US, they're trying to break out of their stigma and the stereotypes put there. But I know the US doesn't have the best rep for producing, the best footballers in the world. They are right now, but so I think that's different. But I would say that I personally advocate going to college. I know maybe, now that there's a lot of like financial opportunities growing for women and as a pro, so like maybe you don't have to go immediately before. But I think it's a good step in your journey just as a human being and ensuring that you have a lot of job opportunities. But I will say, being at my age and I'm, still playing and kind of being exposed to different rooms and different, jobs, different people, um, just always being like open to learning, like regardless of if you're in school or if you're playing, like it's really important. And I think having like a mixture of both is very beneficial. But I don't know. I feel like when I first started, like the most like the best suggestion would be to go to college first and then. But now like there's a lot of things changing. But I
Yeah.
think what hasn't changed is the significance of having an education. So being able to fit that in wherever or however that works, I think
Yeah.
is
I agree.
important.
What do you think about playing outside of your 3 month, 4 month season in college? Do you think it's beneficial, or you think that players who want to go professional should consider that?
What do you mean playing outside of
So, like,
the
you have competitions that happen from January through August, because the season's typically from August through December. But a lot of professionals would say that that's not sufficient for somebody who's trying to develop into a professional player. So
Oh, you
when you
mean
think,
like the college seasons go from like
yeah,
the summer to yeah,
college, even high school, I think
yeah,
I'm not sure about the US system, but in Jamaica,
yeah.
they definitely, it's only during the fall. So, I mean, like, would you recommend athletes do? Could be some people suggest track and field. Some people suggest playing
Mm,
football throughout the spring
hmm.
with some clubs and stuff like that. What's your take
Yeah. And you're talking about people like kind of developing like into college, not people already in college. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
from high school. So high school
Yeah, okay, okay, from
or
high school.
college, both,
Yeah,
both,
yeah, yeah.
isn't it?
I'd say the rule for anyone in middle school, high school is to do more.
Yeah,
I don't care what you're doing. You like you have to be doing more to get to the top level. Like whether that be track or I think I don't want to say like boom, like you have to do track. You know, that's like the best compliment, but I'll definitely say from my experience, I'm still benefiting from my track days just in how I recover, how I breathe, like my mentality, you know, just as a competitor, really benefited from that.
yeah,
But even when I stopped playing or stopped running track and started to just focus on football, like my club season. Actually didn't play high school season because my team was that bad. We didn't have a team. But or I would like train with the boys, but that's not no story. Um, but even when I stopped running track, like I was doing hill sprints in the morning before school, you know, or I was training or, you know, even like maybe even in like fifth grade, you know, or starting back in like middle school, I'd come home and I would like go around the block, you know, or you know, I would you have to do more, you know. So I definitely suggest that if it's like a cross sport, that's cool. If it's just you having your own like program, and doing, you know, so getting some more work in, or if you're also like for me, it was really important to have another like playing environment outside of um like my club. And I didn't have like, you know, people are fancy now with their individual trainer. Or I guess technically my dad was one, or he'd like to call
yeah. He
himself
was
one.
yours. Yeah,
He definitely would. He would definitely want to be on a payroll. But uh having like a good group to play like pick up with for me was like older guys or having a group that like can challenge you. So whether that's like an individual coach where you're going with people or you know doing something extra, it's so important. Like if you're only doing the same as the person next to you, like that isn't enough,
yeah,
in my opinion. It might be enough to just kind of get your foot in the door somewhere, but like you will find the ceiling at some point unless at every level, like you're doing more. And with that, um, like philosophy, I guess, you can imagine that like as you move up, you still have to do more, you know, like Messi at his highest level still had to put in hours, you know, during the week to work on his heading, you know, or like at Barcelona, for example, or, you know, so every level, like you should be growing and doing more.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one last question for you. For young professionals, you've had 4, 5, 6 years of experience so far. What advice would you give them in terms of the start of their careers?
I think I, hmm, I think I would say or suggest, um, making a goal or like trying to think of like what your longer plan is for or like your longer objective is for your career or like where do you want to what level like where do you want to be, you know, like you're just starting, you know, it's not going to look exactly as you want normally. um a lot of times like people kind of have to start at a lower level to kind of build their resume, you know, but like where are you trying to go? That's something that I wish I did for myself, and was a little bit more proactive in my journey versus just kind of like going with the flow as is my MO often. But you know, some of my peers, they're like, okay, I'm not there right now, but I want to peak in England, you know, or like trying to get like a bit more direction for where you want your journey to go. I would suggest that. I would also suggest um I don't know. I what else would I? There's so many things, but
Yeah,
maybe just being open to yourself as a player. I think, and the ways that you know, just in terms of like positions you can play or styles. I think sometimes people start their professional career like I am a number 7, and this is who I am, but like you're starting as a pro is like you're starting over again. Like you've grown so much, you've developed so much, maybe you've balled out in college, but once you get to the pro, it's like a new baseline, or hopefully there's some leagues where it's like, what are y'all doing here? But hopefully you're you're at the new baseline where, everyone is at the least at this quality. So, what is your next like growth arc now? What's your next path in that way? So, um, yeah. And I also would say like don't be afraid to like step outside of, like the cookie cutter path in pro or, don't be afraid to like go to a new place or challenge yourself in a new league and, become more technical, go to Italy or, different things. So just try to be as open as possible.
Yeah, I agree to that. I think we do create a plan. It's always good to have a plan, but be open
Yeah.
for any other turns you have to take to get to where you want to get to. Definitely a good
Yeah.
mindset to have. Well, Chinny, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I think the youngsters will learn a lot from you, and
Okay,
we
thanks for
hope
having me.
to wish you all the best for your season coming up. Well, sorry, the season that
Yes.
has started.
Oh yeah. Well, it's coming up for me since I had a little late start, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
and we wish you all the best on that. All right,
Thank you very much.
all
Talk
right.
again.